So what do you think is going to be the tipping point, the trigger point for airports to enter into the right kind of conversations with you? What's going to prompt them?
If I knew that, I would be very happy. What we can say is that we have been invited and seen almost all the big airport groups do tenders in actually almost this year or the year or last year. So a lot of them are starting to prepare to tender, are starting to prepare the strategy. Everyone is trying to wrap their heads around what does digitalization mean for an airport. And if you're talking to ops people and you're talking to strategy or commercial people, those are two very, very different stories.
Yes.
If you're talking to a CIO about digitalization, they are thinking about tracking, about biometric passport control, about how to ensure much more seamless workflows, baggage handling and so on. And if you're talking to the commercial people, it's a completely different story, obviously. So a lot of airports are in this situation now. They're trying to hire the right know-how because they've never done e-commerce before, so they do need this know-how. And of course, this is a process that we're seeing.
You need to collaborate with the right people in terms of the resource within the airports. And you know, you're right. I mean, to my knowledge, there is an inadequate supply of the right kind of people there. And that's an issue.
And of course we can help because we can avoid baby mistakes. We can avoid going into situations that we have seen don't work. We know what product portfolio works online versus what doesn't. Putting 80,000 SKUs of you know, regular beauty and cosmetics, liquor and tobacco on a platform is not the solution for e-commerce at airports. That's something we have learned very clearly, because the focus for passengers to go through that process is actually to ensure availability of that product. And if they're not concerned that that product will be available, they will not go through an online channel. So that's why we have seen the major uptick from product ranges that are rare, that are expensive, that you can't buy at every Costco or every supermarket in the city. And of course also there the price wars are not as huge. If you're looking at a lot of the SKUs that are being sold at airports right now, whether it's a Hugo Boss perfume or something like that, you can very often buy these online cheaper now. And especially in evolved e-commerce markets like Germany or the UK, you can almost always buy them cheaper unless it's a duty-free product. So that is of course something that the airports and the retailers need to take into consideration. Price transparency is becoming a much more common thing. So focusing on product ranges that might not do the volume, but actually still give you the margin is something that in e-commerce is extremely essential. And one of the things that we have noticed is this is really a new niche that the airports retailers can occupy, because the top premium brands, they will not list on Amazon or Alibaba for the foreseeable future.
Some have though.
Some have, but only if they are the actual sellers themselves, you know. And even then, there are already big worries happening about grey market, about fakes and so on. Airports enjoy a lot of trust from people.
Authenticity.
Authenticity is given. So that leads to the fact that if you manage to get your retailers on an e-commerce marketplace, you manage to get into the search engines with that, you manage to partner with shopping platforms in China, in Russia, in Vietnam, all around the world, then you have this niche where you can actually put brands that would never go online, you can put them online because you still ensure the passenger goes to the airport, goes to that store, picks it up there, and you still have that brand experience that the premium brands are so focused on. And I think that is really a niche that is largely unexplored. There are very few companies like Net-a-Porter that have managed to get more into the premium segment due to good brand relationships, but this is something where the airports have a lot of growth potential.
The airports are going to want to include their lead retailer, their duty-free retailer, as well as some of the specialty stores, food and beverage and so on. Are you finding that there's a degree of resistance from the retailers, and that this is very much an airport-driven item?
Yes, it is a combination though. So there are a lot of retailers that are very embracing. We've also been largely embraced by the brands. The brands know they need to be more digital ready. They know they need to embrace this. It's been more challenging with the big duty-free operators, simply because they have started developing their own channels to try to sell digitally to the passengers. The success rate of that is questionable at the moment, and for me the main reason behind that is that passengers do not really associate with a duty-free brand unless they are a very frequent passenger and they've seen that brand and they have interacted with that brand. I would say even the airports have a little bit of a challenge. Not every airport is a brand itself either. The biggest brand for a passenger, frankly, is still the airline. So from our point of view, the correct channel to a passenger is via the airline, through the airport to the retailer.
But you know as well as me that the airlines and the airports tend to operate on a mutually exclusive basis. They don't really, I mean, other than just the operational issues, they don't really connect with each other on any other level. It's a problem.
It is a problem. We have managed to make first baby steps with partnerships between Lufthansa and Frankfurt Airport and other ones happening around the world that are not yet official. Generally, low-cost carriers, interestingly enough, are much more open to that idea. A lot of airports make huge parking revenues from Ryanair, for example, because Ryanair is very open to selling parking for the airports. I think it's a question of two things. One is a question of how you create an ecosystem of win-win rather than how can I make the most myself. And the second question is who in this ecosystem is actually digitally ready enough to participate. And that's actually one of the bigger challenges in many cases. So we have to do a lot of groundwork also in helping the different parties become more ready for a kind of API-based digital commerce experience. Because frankly, a lot of the legacy systems are not capable of doing that.
You just touched upon it on airlines, and you have got a fairly well publicised contract with Singapore Airlines and DFAS. How ready is that?
We're going to go live early next year with the first release. The partnership has been, I have to say, has been really fantastic because the Singapore Airlines is an airline that it has a can-do attitude, which is something you find very rarely. I have been in many meetings where problems were usually discussed rather than the solutions to those problems, and the experience that we've made with them in particular has been quite the opposite, and it's a real can-do attitude. We work really well together. I think they are very likely going to be the biggest airline e-commerce player in the market very soon because of the way that they're approaching it, the way that they put the customer first, the way that we're going to create real aha experiences for the passengers rather than a trolley being pushed down an alley with someone shouting duty free quickly enough that no one says yes.
That's right.
So yes, I think there's a huge potential there, and if you see how much the in-flight sales are dropping and how much our e-commerce pre-order and home delivery sales are growing, it's very, very promising.
And in the airline market, there's almost a domino effect, isn't there? If people see that a system like that is working, their eyes will light up and say, well, we'll have some of that too. And particularly, as you're going back to the point you made earlier, if they're not actually active any longer in the duty-free market, and they can get some residual benefits from an overriding deal. Well, Kian, this has been a pretty all-embracing interview, and thanks for your time. One final question. If there was one sentence that defined AOE and the RM3 platform, what would it be?
I think it's a tricky one. I mean, essentially, what we're trying to do is prevent disruption and benefit from it at the same time. This is really what we're trying to achieve, because the disruption is there. Anyone who says it's not, and anyone who says that e-commerce is not a challenge to travel retail, that's just foolish. We can see it in the day-to-day. and that this bubble will not last forever. And especially the young millennials are, you know, we've done interviews at airports where they said, oh, I wouldn't know why I should shop at an airport, it must be really expensive.
Yeah, it's a constant mindset.
So it's a very changing mindset that is happening. Whereas if you target these passengers with good deals early on in their journey, you make it a seamless experience, you focus on not only convenience but also ease of use, customer experience. You know, I always like to use that phrase of you need to order a product with the swipe of a finger. If you get to that level of convenience,
you mean like Tinder?
Sort of. then you get to a level where price becomes less relevant. And one data point that 100% supports that is that it was recently found that Amazon Prime members, 95% of them never check prices anywhere else anymore than Amazon.
Wow.
And a platform like Amazon, as many people don't know, changes prices on an individual product up to 1,000 times a day. So you cannot be sure that you will always get the best price.
But that's blind trust.
But you have blind trust that you will always get a good deal there, and the convenience of having one checkout basket, never having to add your details again, never having to add payment details again, being protected from
It's a one-stop
fraud,
shop.
all of that, that is why people do it. So if the airports and the airlines want to get into a situation of that sort of trust, they need to do a better job.
And they need to be with you.
You said that.
That was a longer than one sentence, Kian, but thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.